Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at My Farm Shop, which is a 2020 release board game designed by Rudiger Dorn and published by Pegasus Spiel. This one accommodates 2 to 4 players and takes 30 to 45 minutes to play. The objective of the game is we're trying to get as many points as we can, depicted by coins. And of course, the player with the most coins at the end of the game is going to be the winner. You've got the main board that looks like this, which is simply a drafting pool ready where you put all these different cards on these different spots, each relating to a different number from 1 to 6. You're going to start with a bunch of resources on the table in the common supplies. You've got wool, you've got milk, you've got honey, you've got eggs, you've got these sacks as well. And you also have sunflowers, which are really useful tools, which I'll touch on a little bit later. And you also have some public objectives should you choose to put them into the game. So this is a little optional expansion if you want to play with that. You've got a deck of cards here, which is the size of that deck is going to depend on the player count. So in a 2-player game, you're going to have fewer cards in that deck than if it was a 4-player game. And as you can see here, the decks are scaled, so they go from 3 to 1 and they go up to 5. So as the deck goes through, the cards do kind of get more powerful and they change as the game develops. You have your own individual player board here, which is your farm. You've got all these different spots where you can put new cards on, but you're going to start with some pre-printed ones on there. You've got some spots here where you can put your sunflowers on, which can kind of increase your engine slightly, and you've also got your own little player board here, or your own little farm shop, which shows your capacity to store goods. So you've got a capacity of 16 goods, and you're going to start the game with 1 of each of those goods. And you're also going to have 3 dice, because this is a dice-driven game, almost in the vein of a game like Space and Machi Quoro. So it has a lot of similarities to them, but let's show you how this game is different. So each turn in My Farm Shop is pretty simple. So you're going to take the 3 dice here, you're going to roll them, and then you're going to choose which one of those dice you want to select relating to the board here. So again, I've got the options of 3 or 6 here, so I could use the 6 to take this card here, or I could use the 3 to take this card here. Now optionally, at any time, I can choose to spend one of these burlaps in order to rotate that pip value up or down 1, at least kind of virtually. So I'm not actually physically changing the die, but I can actually choose to spend them. So I could get rid of one of these to maybe move that 3 to a 4, or move the 3 to a 2. So for every sack you spend, you can kind of rotate that pip value up or down by 1. But let's just say I chose this one here by spending this 6. So we're going to put that 6 on there like that, and then I can put this card anywhere on my board overlapping one of these existing spaces. So this one, and let's just say I put it on the 7 spot here, because 7 is going to be the most rolled or most commonly rolled. And some of these cards have one-off uses, so this one's going to be triggered by activating the 2 other dice. So these 2 are going to correspond to which action I'm going to take. So I've got a 3 and 3 here, so that's going to make a 6. So that was going to give me another sack. So I'm going to take the sack from the supply and add it to my pool here. Now I could have actually chosen to put this one on here like this and immediately use the card, which is going to get me 1 of each resource. But as you can see, once I've used this one, I actually get rid of it straight away because it's a one-time use. But also, not only is this combined value going to affect me, it's also going to affect all the other players as well, because of course each player's got their own farm and they're going to trigger the spot that corresponds to their 6 as well. Again, you can use burlap sacks in order to rotate that pip value up or down by how many you spend. So if I really wanted, let's say a honey rather than the sack here, I can choose to spend one of these sacks to move this down to a value 5. And once all the players have activated the 2 remaining dice, then they're going to replenish this board here with a new card, and it's going to go on to the next player. Let's talk about what some of these cards can do, because as I said, the deck does scale as it goes throughout, and they get more and more powerful, and the endgame trigger is going to be worked out once that deck does run out. So you've got lots of different things here. So you've got kind of the resource gaining ones like this. You've got ones that have these storefronts on them, which is basically where you're going to start trading in your goods for certain benefits. So one of the benefits you can do is to get these sunflowers. And when you get these sunflowers, you're going to take one from the supply and you can put them and cover up these different notches on the board here. So you can see some of these spots here have 2 kind of spaces you can put them to, and some of them only have 1. The 7 doesn't have any at all. But when you put these on a certain spot, let's just say I put it on the 8 here, if I or any other player rolled an 8 on a future turn and activated that spot, then I can actually choose to not only get the reward here, so I'd obviously get a milk and a sack, and add them to that, and of course the milk goes onto my actual farm board, but they actually increase the output by 1, so I could actually get maybe 2 milk and a sack, or a milk and 2 sacks, and that applies to anything as well. So even if you put it on sunflower on here, which is actually going to be a kind of a points gaining area, where I could normally trade in 2 goods for 4 coins, which is points, I could actually choose to trade in 2 goods for 5 coins, or maybe even 6 coins if I had 2 sunflowers there. So they really do boost the spots where you choose to invest those sunflowers in, and it's a really useful tool to use throughout the game. So I've just pulled out a few of these cards just to give an examples about what these cards can actually do. So you've got ones here where you get a whole bunch of resources and you can trade them all in for a massive 11 points, which is huge, but that's a one-off use thing. You've got ones here that give you just pure points, which are obviously great. You've got these arrow ones here, which I really like. So you can actually choose to put these on the bottom row of your board. And when you choose to, well, when you land on that certain spot by again, rolling a 9, then you can actually choose to take the resource above it. So you can actually get this spot here rather than the normal one you choose. So it's kind of a diversion kind of card. You've also got the same kind of thing here, but with the arrows. So again, if you really are going for a certain strategy in order to trade in certain resources, you can maybe put this like this, and when you land a 4, you can pick either side. You've got ones like this where you get double rewards. You've got you get big trade-in values there. You've got these versatile ones where you can choose to either get those resources or trade in those resources for points. So these are really useful tools to use. You've got the ones that trade in burlap sacks for points. You can start getting rid of your sunflowers for points, and of course you can even gain your sunflowers in the first place to increase your engine, but you can't actually boost those cards with more sunflowers because that would be a bit cheeky. But that's going to be basically how the game plays. As I said, you can additionally add in these public objectives, which are a race to get to a certain kind of criteria. So the first person to have 8 burlaps in their supply can get 6 coins, and the second place can get 3 coins. And the first person to get 5 sunflowers, and the first person to fill the whole capacity of their farm shop. So yeah, that adds just a little bit more player interaction, gives you something to aim towards, just to give you a path to follow. So that's going to be how the game's going to play until that deck runs out, and of course the player at the end of the game with the most victory points is going to be the winner. So let's talk about my thoughts about my farm shop. So first off, mechanically this game is an absolute breeze to teach. It's very simple phases. Roll the 3 dice. Pick one of them to take a card from the main board, and then use the other 2 to activate spots on your own player board. And of course, all the other players are going to be engaged because they're also kind of really excited to see what you're going to roll, because that could really affect them in useful ways. And because of course they're going to trigger their board. But I like the decisions that stem from this. So first off, there is some player angst or turn angst when it's someone else's turn and they're taking cards that you potentially want. So I like the fact it's all taken from a common supply here, a common pool, and sometimes you really want a specific card, but you can't have it because someone has grabbed it before you have. But also, again, I love the fact that you get the full effect of the other 2 dice that are rolled. So naturally, this game is always going to be compared to Space Base. It's going to be compared to Machikoro. But I will say straight up, this game is so much more engaging because when it is someone else's turn, the other 2 dice that they haven't used to take a card with, you get to use the full effect of your player board. So normally in those games, you get some kind of subpar version of that by maybe getting a coin or 2. But in this one, again, you can use that full benefit of those cards. And it's not just 2 different kind of factors that you're weighing in when it's your turn and someone else's turn. So I really like that. Also, one of the big factors that I didn't like about those games was the fact that you are so dependent on the dice rolls. Now this one, yeah, of course, it is. There's a lot of random output, but these are an absolute godsend. So these burlap sacks are just the absolute kind of Midas touch to this game, which is needed because, even if you don't roll something that you particularly want, you can use these to mitigate that pip value, to tailor it to your own needs for that turn. And managing this is like a whole other resource that you need to kind of keep a hold of, because you want to be making sure that you keep taking in burlap sacks, and there are kind of more improved versions as the game goes on, where you can get more and more and more, and using them is such a useful tool, and you want to be making sure that you're not subject to that dice roll, and making sure that you do always have a constant flow of these. So I really do like the addition of these, and that might sound a bit silly because it's only just a one little mitigation tool, but the first thing that really kind of came into my head with this game was like, what if a game like Castles of Burgundy didn't have the workers? That is the significance of what these sacks are to this game. I really do think it's a profound part of the game and a massive, massive improvement on the other games I mentioned. So very, very happy with that addition. I think it's an absolute necessity. Another thing I really like about this game is the fact that when you do roll your initial dice, you are always taking one card to add to your player board. So you don't have to go through that horrible churning mechanism as you do with these other games where you're just grinding money in order to buy a card from the centre and add it to your board. This one, you always getting new cards, and yeah, they're all good and they do constantly get better as you go out through the game, which might feel a bit more forgiving, but there is still that turn angst when it is other players' turns and they're going to grab the cards you want, because sometimes you really do have the flexibility to cater towards a certain strategy and really focus on things here. So, for example, I might really want to have kind of a wool building strategy because I have loads of cards that convert wool into points, so I can start gaining these arrows and getting more and more wool cards and getting a bit of an engine going where I can start pointing to this card and pointing to this card and keep turning in points and getting things going and going and going. And then sometimes cards will pop up that will benefit that engine and keep you keep that thing spinning, and if people are taking those cards that you wanted, then that's not going to be so great. So you are invested when it's other players' turns and grabbing the cards here, but also of course with the actual dice that they're going to leave for you to take the actual action from your player board as well. So yeah, I think this game has such a nice flow to it, and it always feels like you're moving forward. It feels like you're getting better and better, but it still has that horrible tension of, are you going to take a card? Well, you have to take a card, but what are you going to replace? Because you might have a really nice setup here that you want and enjoying, and it's working for you, but you do have to soon kind of ruin that engine at times to replace things. But generally that's going to be an improvement, but that's not always the case. I also really enjoy the fact you have physical resources in this game. So you do have a strict capacity, and I do generally like games where you do have kind of a storage capacity and you have to use those efficiently. Now, are you going to keep rolling things that are going to keep gaining you resources and you're just not landing on those shops to get rid of these resources to get points? So you're going to have to be efficient and try not to waste those resources. And that kind of ties into the factor of balancing your farm. So you've only got 10 spots. And those 10 spots are obviously, you want to be kind of really precisely managing that to keep a balance of income and outcome. So it's very hard to make sure that you don't have too many shops and you're not getting enough resources, or having too many resources and not enough shops. So it all kind of stems back to that idea of constantly taking cards and keeping that thing running smoothly to make sure that you have a nice income and a nice outcome at the same time. And that is really where this game does shine, because you do feel like you're spinning plates and just keeping things flowing to keep that constant income of points. But still at the same time, are you going to save up for those bigger amount of points and get big things such as this, we can get a massive 11 points, or are you going to go for a smaller, smoother engine where you're just getting a couple of resources and trading them in, It really does depend on the kind of strategy and how you've tailored your own personal farm. So I really do like the way that you have different paths to victory and different things you can try from game to game, depending on which cards come out and which ones are available to you at any time. The replayability of this game is also good because you're not always going to have access to these same cards, not only because other people are going to be drafting them from under your nose, but because some cards are taken out of the deck from game to game as well. So you can't just rely on a certain path and do the same thing every game. You're going to have to adjust and act tactically rather than just mapping out your game before you even get started. So I do like that. And in terms of player interaction, there is, of course, you're always relying on what other people do, because when they roll dice, that's going to affect your board. But if you really want to take it to the next level, you can actually kind of have a bit of a glance at other players' boards and see what's going to affect them, what's going to affect, kind of improve your farm more than theirs. Are they going to be looking for a certain card, and do you want to kind of almost hate draft it? So you can choose to implement a higher level of player interaction than maybe what's intended with this game, or you can play it just more passively and sit back and just do your own thing and affect people unwillingly, as I said, by drafting cards that they want or something like that. But I do like the fact that you do have this little injection of player interaction with these player goals. So these do just give you a little bit of attention and make you race towards something, which I think it fixes a nice hole if people don't want, or people want that little bit more or that extra layer of player interaction. So this is certainly a welcome addition. I'd play with every game really, because it doesn't hurt the game at all. It's very simple to explain, and it certainly doesn't slow things down or anything. So yeah, I always play with the public objectives just to ramp up that tension with the other players. So let's talk about some of the production here. So first off, I think all the components are perfectly good quality. The resources and stuff are fine. You've just got these tokens. The player boards are good quality. The farm shops are good quality. You got some nice dice here, and the resources are all fine. Symbology is nice and clear, as you'd probably expect with a game of this weighting. It's not very complex. The iconography is pretty basic, just your resources and your coins and stuff. So very simple, but well done production. And the one thing I don't like at all is the box cover. I think this one looks a bit tacky, and it looks like some really cheap, almost like iPhone app or something. It just doesn't look right to me, and I would like to have seen a bit more refined, a bit more distinguished front cover, but I can see the market this is going for. It's certainly looking for a more family-friendly market, and maybe something like this is more appealing to them rather than me as a grown man. But very small nitpick there, but generally as a production, I'm happy with it, no problem at all. This game also scales perfectly, whether you're playing at 2 players, up to 4 players, it's really not going to affect anything. You're going to get the full experience. It's going to still feel snappy because, as I said, when it's other players' turns, you still get your full experience on your own player board. So yeah, no matter which player count you play this at, it's going to be perfectly fine, and it's not going to change the gameplay or experience at all. And I suppose naturally I always normally compare games with one another to see if this does ring any bells with other games. And I mentioned before, Machikoro, Space Base, and the newest Bad Company as well use this system. But this one, for me, because of those reasons that I explained earlier, the burlap sacks, you've got the physical resources, you've got the fact that you're not saving for cards, you're just drafting a card every turn. All that stuff really does make this game so much better and a much more rewarding and satisfying experience than those other games I mentioned. So yeah, very, very happy with that. And I always kind of hark back to that thing where you aren't building 2 little engines here. You've not got your own one that you use on your turn where you take the meaty turns. Also, when it's other players' turns, you are getting the full action, which is absolutely a tremendous improvement. And I always love it when there is a system that I like, because I always felt like there was a great game within, or potentially a great game within that Machikoro and space-based system, but for some reason I couldn't find it within those games. But I love it when a great designer like Rudiger Dorn, one of my favourite designers and one of the most versatile designers out there, and puts his stamp on a game like this and fixes all those little problems to make it a bit gamier, but not too gamey to the point where it's taken away from what it's supposed to be. But all those little things, those small improvements, make for a drastically better experience. So overall, I think My Farm Shop is a delightful game. So if I was to recommend any future kind of newbie gamer who's looking for the new gateway games, rather than the traditional games that people always recommend, I would certainly reach out and say, try My Farm Shop, because it has so much going on here. All those little problems that I had with the other systems are all fixed here, and this is the game that I wanted from that system. I think it's smooth, it's engaging, it's fast. For a 30 to 45 minute game, it does so much, and this is a game I really will never turn down a game of. I'm really enjoying it. I can't see that changing anytime soon, and it's just a really satisfying experience, and I absolutely love it. So I think it's a really nice game, and despite maybe the cutesy artwork, which might be a bit of a turn off for a lot of people, give this one a go and give it the benefit of the doubt, because I personally think it's lovely, and as I said, it's going to be a staple for recommendations for family weight gamers and for gateway gamers for some time to come. So really happy with this one, and bit of a surprise really, because I wasn't sure what to expect after the relative letdowns of Machikoro and Space Base, but again, this one fixed all those problems, and I'm still really enjoying it. So that is My Farm Shop by Rudiger Dorn. Gets a strong shield of quality from me. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you found it useful or at least somewhat entertaining, then please hit like and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Additionally, if you wish to support the show, because I am a one-man operation and I don't get any support from publishers, then please consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/chairman of the board, where you can back for as little as £2 per month. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.